Hello everyone, my name is Jiyoung from Build and Grow. It's really nice to see you all, even though we meet each other via this video setting. But I hope you can get some insights and then the way that you can look back the way of your teaching through this video conference. So today I'm going to talk about Surface, which is one of our young others course book. So through this 45 minute workshop, I hope you can get some useful tips that you can use in your classroom. So let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about first theory side of it, because whenever we develop series, we study hard. All the editors, marketers get together and then we discuss a lot about what kind of theory that we're gonna have as a foundation in the theory. So that theory is global competence. So we're going to discuss that a bit. After that, we're going to discuss how we are going to apply this global competence in your English class via Surface. So I hope you're ready for this. Now we're going to start with this global competence. I know that you guys are really rigorous teachers, so some of you might hear about these theories. But we can start from 4Cs, which is 21st century skills. Last 10 years, I bet you heard this a lot, right? Through this workshop, Max TESOL, or any kind of English events that you attended. And simply, 4C is developing one student's capacity to deal with the learning process, right? Before, our students are very, how can I say, it's passive. If I look back my elementary through high school years, there was barely project or discussion. Usually I just sit back and then look at the teachers, and then she or he provide all the information that I need to digest to take a test, and then that was it. If you're good at digestion of all those information, and then if you remember all, you were okay to take any kind of a test. And then through that test result, you're gonna be, how can I say that, labeled as a good students in academic field or not so good students in that area. But through those education, educators around the world notice that, oh, this is not actually students' capacity building, right? So we want them to have those information, but we want them to utilize that information by communication, collaboration, to think critically, and also all of those combined together, we want them to think outside of the box, which is creativity, right? That's why last 10 years, we focus a lot on this 4Cs, which is 21st century skill. But now, it goes to this global competence. Quite interesting, right? If you look into global competence, it's pretty similar with the 4Cs, but it's worldwide version of it. Quite interesting, right? I know that these letters are pretty tiny, but we are going to look into it in the few slides. But before we get deep into global competence, you would notice, oh, dimensions of global competence, OECD, PISA handbook, right? So before we get into it, we need to discuss this first. I think OECD, some of you are familiar with it because OECD is one of the UN agencies, and then they have the local offices around the world. So basically, OECD is the offices to focus on economic development around the world. And then one of the organization under OECD is PISA. PISA is pretty simple. It's just, they just get together and then they assess students around the world and then predict that nation's economic future based on students' performance. Quite interesting, right? Because I think it's pretty like obvious that if you invest a lot on students' education and then their progress, and those students' capacity bring in lots of economic development in one country. It's been shown a lot throughout the many countries. Like for example, my country, like Korea, we had nothing back in right after World War II, right? Korean War. But we kind of made a huge progress because like Korea's tendency, we focus a lot on our kids like education. Even though we starve ourselves, we invest money for our students. So those kind of elements depends on one nation's future, like Singapore, Korea, you can name it, right? So that's why OECD work closely with the PISA to determine each nation's economic future and then development. I hope you this explanation is like understandable. Then now we're going to look into what is global competence. So let's read this through all together. So global competence is the capacity to examine local, global, and intercultural issues, to understand and appreciate the perspective and then worldviews of others, to engage in open, appropriate, and effective interactions with people from different cultures, and to act for collective well-being and sustainable development. Quite a lot of words, right? But if you look into from the first, to examine local, global, and intercultural issues. Well, when we think about this COVID-19, well, we need to look into that effect in our local community, right? My uncle and who own a taco place around the corner, they ran out of business because of this lockdown, right? It could be a really like severe local issues. So we need to be able to look into that locally. And at the same time, it's a huge global issues, global pandemic. But at the same time, even though we are doing a great job to block this virus to spread, if like for example Middle East or Central South America, they're suffering with lots of numbers, then we are not safe enough, right? Because it's all related. And if you look into these issues, you can definitely look into how different cultures are reacting these issues, and also what's our point of view and then an extra. And then to lead that, well, we need to understand how others think in these issues, not the virus itself, like how to prevent it, and then how we need to react to these issues. In Korea, for example, we all have different like ideas how we are dealing with this one. Some might say that we need to block all the airports and then all the ports, so we don't want anyone from outside of Korea. Some people might say that, and then some people says, no, that's based on our economy, import and exporting, so we cannot shut our doors. We need to go our economy rolled over, right? So you need to be able to understand these different like views about one issues. And once you have these different views, you need to be able to engage in productive discussion with others. Otherwise, well, if you look at the last one, we cannot act on these issues, right? So for example, if, well, I remember that few weeks ago, we had like the the skyrocketing numbers of confirmed cases. So there's a many people they're debating whether we have to do the lockdown or no, we cannot do that anymore. So we have to go on, but be careful. So I think we have those in between locked down. So from certain period, you cannot open the cafes. So cafes, you only have the takeouts, those kind of the mediate solution. I think that's the way to discuss these issues and then find the solution together. I think that's all about. So global competence requires lots of forces. You can see, right? They need to be able to communicate and then collaborate and think critically and also think outside of the box, but in a global like version. So I hope this explains like fully about the global competence. Now we're gonna go into then why that is that important, right? So why now 4C was hard enough, right? But now why global competence? So if you look at the first two over here, it says lots of things like, well, one nations, we cannot live by our own, right? So if you go to quite advanced countries, you need lots of work sources from other countries. And also, if you go into developing countries, then they host lots of international companies to have factories or to have offices to make their economic bloom in that land, right? So if you look at this like symptoms over here, yes, labor market is changing rapidly, right? And also due to these reasons, if you go into any communities, you would see like different races, different nationalities, and extra, right? So this means you need to have this mindset to work with people from different cultures or different nations and also with be a different mindset. I think that's really important. And this too is very clear. And then if you look at this using media platform, I think nowadays BTS is one of the really like mega like group around the world, right? So many of my friends before, they didn't know the word of Korea before. But now most of them, they know the hanbok, which is a Korean traditional like clothing, or certain places in Seoul because of the BTS. And then they mentioned that if I search a certain information via Korean, I can find a lot more information than just Googling with Espanol or like English. So that's what they say. So they want to use media platform in an effective way by using certain language, right? For example, my case, I'm very, how can I say them? I'm very into baking. So whenever I look for certain recipes, or for example, if I wanna find the recipes in plan, I can find something in English website, but a lot more if I Google them with Espanol, right? So if you wanna use this media platform effectively, then you need to understand other cultures and also you need to be able to have those mindsets, right? And then last one is pretty simple because as I mentioned, this is guided by OECD. So UN agency's final goal is they want to make the earth, the whole the nation in a better world, right? So they always mentioning about this sustainable development goals. So when you understand this sustainable development goals, you need to have this global competence mindset. So I'm going to show you this like brief PPT over here. For example, when you talk about puberty, we always have our own puberty kind of like standard in our mindset. For example, like he lives smaller apartment than mine. So I always think he's poor, right? Or, oh, those ladies who has luxurious brand name bags, for example. So she's not poor. So we cannot say that. So there's a certain standard about puberty. For example, you don't have access to the clean water, you don't have access to the house which has a roof. So those puberty is different from puberty in our mindset. So when you wanna work with those puberty issues, hunger issues, for example, gender equality, or global warming or extra, we need to have those certain standards all together. So these topics are quite hard, I understand that, but at the same time, it's a great topic to discuss and also develop our students' global competence mindset. So now we're going to discuss this, how we can apply global competence in our classroom. You might be curious that you're just an English teacher in small town near Pachuca. So how can I apply this wonderful concept in my classroom? But don't worry about it too much because I've been to schools in Central South America, including Mexico. And what you guys are doing is wonderful. You guys are incorporating already many of these forces and global competence. And when you look into any kind of English book lately, well, they don't want to just cover literature for the students, for example. They want to provide the information and then some understandings about what's happening around the world. So if you look into those, you're covering pretty much a lot. But at the same time, if you don't have the resources, don't freak out. And once, I know that some of the teachers use news clips or like just newspapers or any kind of reading text from internet. Just be careful that if that is fact-based information. And as you know, there are so many like broadcasting companies around the world. And then not all providing information with fact-based mindset. Some of them are super biased, right? So you should be careful with that. And also, if you're, for example, if you're talking about climate changes, gender equality, Black Lives Matter in your classroom, you're covering global developments pretty much well. So don't worry about it too much, but look into those information because PISA's website and then OECD's website, you can find information easily. And plus, cultural differences, you need to be aware of that. I remember when I was in Europe for the first time, that was like 20 years ago or like more than that, I would say. And whenever I walk down the street, I saw kids and then young adults, they're doing this a lot to me. You know this like motions, right? And then nowadays, if I travel Europe or Central South America, not many people doing that because now they're aware. That's very inserting motions for Asians, right? So they're not doing that. I think so those kind of cultural differences, awareness, it's very important. And also international, intercultural relationships. I know that, well, if you go to like, for example, Monterrey in Mexico, well, it's people are totally different from people from Chiapas, right? So you two in the same country, but sharing different cultures, right? So it's very important to understand each other and then have a, like, how can I say that, respectful relationship to each other. And even in Korea too, Korea is like teeny tiny countries compared to any countries around the world, but we have those regional differences and then different cultures. So whenever you meet people from different cultures or different regions, just treat them without having any stereotype of thinking or any assumption. I think you can definitely incorporate that within the class. And then that goes with this value of diversity. I think the more diversity that you have within the country, I think the more the nation have, how can I say that, the bright future. If you have just one races and then very ethnocentric, then we tend to have those like similar mindset and then similar way of look at one things. But once you have those diversities within the one nation, I think that helps you lots of power to look one issue into different ways. I think that goes with the classroom too. So those five things sounds very hard, but if you look into your way to deal with your classroom and then students, I bet you are already covering some of these stuffs. So this is how you can incorporate global competence in the classroom. And as I mentioned, from the beginning of this workshop, when we developed Surface, we got into together and then we discussed a lot with this global competence. So I understand that main goal for coursebook always deliver the well-around instruction and then learning experience for students when it comes to reading, speaking, writing, and listening, those four areas in English. But at the same time, we want them to think outside of their own comfort zone and then embracing this global competence. So I will show you one of the lessons in this surface. It's pretty simple. This unit's goal at the end, you want your students to be able to give directions. Quite simple, right? I think most of the coursebook, they covered this from the book one. But at the same time, before they gain this capacity, you need to provide this information, for example, places, name in English, and then prepositions of locations. So those are the one part of the unit. And then second part, and then what can they do in their places, and then activities that they can do in their places, those kind of things kind of enrich when they give the directions. So we're going to cover all of this through this unit 7. Then you might be curious, how can they relate it to global competence that I mentioned, right? But if you look at this, yes, at the end, they need to be able to give the direction in their own community, mostly, right? When they have tourists or when they have those foreigners, yes, they can use this capacity. But they can always think, oh, what's the community around the world? And then how those community are similar to our community. And then, oh, I can explain these in the same sentence. I think that's really nice way to broaden a bit about their way of thinking, right? If I talk to one of the students who are from very smaller, like town or city, they always mention that there's nothing, but not really. You can definitely think about it and then discuss more about that. So I think that's really good aspect of how you can incorporate this together. So you're gonna see one module with me and then see how that is applied that into actual lesson. We are going to start this lesson with this video. Let's get started. Yes, I found this video from YouTube and then I was really thrilled because Las Vegas is my hometown. So I think it's a really nice way to start this, like thinking about places, giving out the directions with this video to show one city fully, right? How exciting. And plus, now we can go anywhere. I think for like past like 7 or 8 months, pretty much we are self-locked down over here. So I think it's really nice opportunity for us to see outside of the what we see over here, right? So if you look into this video, then you might be curious, oh, Las Vegas is amazing city, but how that is related to our like giving out the direction kind of lessons, right? But through this initiation, I think you can discuss with your students about the places they saw in the video. I know that it's mostly very bling bling, like casinos and also hotels, but at the same time, I'm not sure you found those information, but small like McDonald's and also like small restaurants and then street fountains, right? Some of your town might have those elements within those town, right? So with this one, yes, for them to be able to say something out loud, we need to provide those information like words, vocabulary for our students. So if you look at this like picture, yes, we divided this into 4 sections, which is service, transportation, dinings, and shopping, entertainment. Underneath, there's places they can find. And when you do this kind of activities, one thing that I can recommend, like check your students' like word capacity now. So if you look at that, give some examples about services. Services means like where you can go and then do some like your like paper get and then also send the mails, schools, and then an extra, right? So look into this like picture and then they can select the places and then underneath they can find out, oh, teacher, hospital. Yeah, that's really good. Hospital goes this way. And then police station, for example. So you can do these kind of activities. Dining, my favorite places around the world, bakeries, right? And then shoppings, entertainment, and transportation. So by doing that, they can think about the places by category, and also they can remember each word's name too. I know that some young adults, they just want to finish as fast as possible, right? But by scaffolding a bit of this like thinking process with them, I bet they can remember further about this word. Once they have all those words in their head, now we can expand a little more with these fun activities. If you look at these 2 graphics on this PPT, yes, this page is similar to some of our favorite places, Instagram pages, right? And on top of that, you and your students are going to listen to this like audio file. After that, what I want you to do is correct the information that are wrong, right? So first, listen this audio carefully and then choose, oh, this is fresh bakery or coffee house. And then look into the information that are given on this Instagram pages and correct that if there's any wrong information. Are you ready? Okay, let's get going.
1. I think I need a cup of coffee. Is there a coffee shop around here? Yes, there is. It's on 10th Street, between the bookstore and the drugstore. Is there a parking lot near the coffee shop? No, there isn't. Then let's walk. The weather is nice. Sounds good. Oh, wait. Let me check their social media page. Sometimes they post discounts or new menu items. Wow, they're offering a 30% discount for students from the 1st to the 6th of September. That's awesome. Let's go. I want a pumpkin spice latte.
Sounds yummy. Pumpkin spice latte, right? So which one is the right place? Right, coffee house, right? You did a great job. And then any information that you want to correct, let's look into it. right, the bank. The right information is going to be drugstore. That's good. And 20%, yeah, they're more generous than 20%, right? 30%. That's really good. And then if you want to add one more information, that would be no parking space available. So this kind of activity is, they already know the place's name. And after that, now we're going to discuss about how we can incorporate grammar elements when we teach coursebook, right? I understand that sometimes we want to explain fully about grammar point for our students. But the thing is, for example, these prepositions of locations, like with this one visual aid, explain a lot better than when we explain in Espanol or in Korean or in English to make them understand. Sometimes, well, for example, if you wanna look at the students, teachers like resources, then we provide some of the videos that matches with this grammar point. I think with that grammar point videos, they understand, oh, with lots of like familiar characters and then situation, they would understand what between means, what next to means, without having any trouble. So as a teacher, when you teach grammar, try to think outside the boxes too. And once you have this visual aid like input with your students, you can expand that into writing a sentence activities. But before they get into actual writing, one thing that I can recommend, can you see this audio file, like the icons over here? They can listen and they can dictate what they hear. I think by doing this exercise, you can stimulate their listening like capacity at the same time, grammar point, and then writing aspect as well. So that's a little tip for you. Okay, after that, yes. Now they understand the prepositions and then place name, and now they can fill in those blanks. And then after that, one thing that you make sure is they have to have this like reading passage input about those places and then also prepositions. So what you're going to see now is they're going to listen to the passages or read it to the passages about one of the most beautiful streets in the world. So I'm going to just take out some of the audio files for you and then your students so you can listen, and then let's check if you can find some of the information that you listened. Okay, here.
The Avenue des Champs-Élysées, the world's most beautiful street. What is the most beautiful street in the world? The French believe it is the Avenue des Champs-Élysées. This old and beautiful street is famous for several reasons. The Avenue des Champs-Élysées is a tourist attraction. Every year, millions of people from around the world visit this avenue because of its grand old buildings, palaces, and theaters. The Arc de Triomphe is at the end of the street. If you climb up to the top of the Arc de Triomphe, you can see an amazing view of Paris. It's a great place to take pictures.
Okay, well, I did a little trick because I know that as a young adult students or as an adult, we tend to read, right, instead of just listening. So I just stop when I want you to focus on. So if you look at these 5 sentences, find the sentences that was in your listening passages, not the reading passages. Can you find it? Yes, first one, good job. And then Arc de Triomphe, right? You did a great job, but what about this Rest 3. You might read in the reading passages, but pretty much not in the listening passages, right? Good. Now let's check if the sentence is giving you right information or not. So the Avenue des Champs-Élysées is a tourist attraction in France. Is that right? Yes, we all know that's right, the sentence. Then what about this one? No, right? It's the end of the Avenue des Champs-Élysées, right? So if you got this right, then you did a great job. So now, after you check this listening comprehension and then good example, to explain the places and then the location of each places. Now it's your students to turn to write down about their area or their country. I think it's a really nice expansion because most of our students, they already know France and then also Champs-Élysées, and then some of our students bucket list to go, right? But at the same time, oh, you have those all the information, and then now, think about my old town, and then my little town, my little area, and then my beautiful country. And then they can explain that information based on what they have. I think it's a really nice way to extend what they have throughout this module. So I hope you get this, the flow of the module, and then the extension that I have over here. So this is module B, pretty much the similar, but as I mentioned from the beginning, they're going to learn the activities that they can do in the places and then ask a question, how can I do that? So at the end, I think this is very fun part of speaking. They're going to recommend the places for the partner and then what they can do. Those kind of exercise kind of made them lead to be able to give the directions to sum up all the information that they have. And then I think this kind of activities are quite useful because now I understand that we cannot go anywhere due to COVID-19, but before I was interviewing some of the high school students in Mexico, and then they always mention about, I really want to go to Japan, or I really want to go to Boston, or somewhere around the world. And then through this kind of activities, they can actually have a discussion with the travel agent and then think about to plan their activities and then think about how to navigate with the map. I think it's really nice way to expand what they already learned and also apply what they already learned into their daily lives. So this is all the Uniflow. I understand that this was very quick because I have given like 45, 50 minutes with you guys. But if you're curious about the contents, then you can definitely talk to one of the Empressor employees. Then they can definitely give you those online book lists that I understand. So this, I just get one unit from this Surpass book 1. And I'm not gonna make you bored about this elements and then everything, but with this Surpass series, you can cover from A1 through C1 with the book 6. And then we are packed with pretty much all the resources that teacher need. So I understand that that was very quick explanation and then like look through kind of like activity explanation. I wish we could see each other in person and then do the fun activities together in the classroom. But this is all I can do for you through this kind of setting. But thank you a lot for staying with me for 45 minutes and 50 minutes. And if you have any questions, please stay and then let's have a little bit of a Q&A. And thank you a lot for today. Bye guys.